decided that what they was going to do is that they was going to build a road. They'd already had the town site and everything. Everybody built their houses and their stores and all that. And so they decided that they were going to branch out. And the government decided to vote and to build a road 5 miles into the wilderness. That was about in the third year. About the fourth year, the town people, they decided they was going to impeach the government because they thought that was a waste of money to take that money they had for taxes and all and what the government had collected from them and to go in. And he said, what use have we going into the wilderness? What use have? Well, just a few years before that, they had enough vision to see a land 3,000 miles away. And very few years after they got there, they already lost that vision. They couldn't even see 5 miles outside the town. And that's how we get sometimes, isn't it? We have a vision, boy, we got this, and we can go and we can do something. And all of a sudden, we lose that vision. We get, like I mentioned here Sunday, we get kind of used to what we have. And all of a sudden, we don't have a vision to march forward. We got our few in here. We got our pews full. We're paying our bills, and we're supporting some missionaries. We're doing different things and helping missionaries and working out in the community and all. And all of a sudden, we don't have that vision really to branch out, to launch out further than what we have. And so here, the people, a lot of times we just lose a vision, and our vision gets blurred. And I hope we don't do that this year at Zion Hill Baptist Church. I hope we can see further than 5 miles out. I've read stories and I've read books, and I'm not planning on doing this next week or next year anyhow, not what the Lord's laid on anybody's heart. But they say one of the greatest things you can do in your church is to launch out and to start another church outside of your church. And I know we don't need another church in Greenville now. You understand that, right? But there may be some surrounding areas that might need a church. And some of you know of Lawrence, down in Lawrence, Faith Baptist Church, where Dr. John Waters was for many years. For many years, that church had a Christian school and everything. How many of you have ever heard of that church? Faith Baptist down there. Dr. John Waters was my teacher in Bible college in the book of John. And Dr. John Waters taught us in geography too, and listen, he went to at that time when I was in Bible college, he had gone every year to the Holy Land, 15 years in a row, something like that. And if you would go with him on a trip to the Holy Land, he'd give you an A for that semester or that year, I can't remember, but you had to pay $3,000 for an A. And I didn't have $3,000 to pay for an A, so I just studied. I studied. And so the church, I was talking to a man down there. In fact, the man was here in our church back during the missions conference, Brother Jerry and I. And Brother Jerry and I and his wife Dee are now with Macedonia. What they do with Macedonia, they help struggling churches. And I talked to Brother Jerry. I found out that he's down there at that church in Lawrence now, Faith, trying to get her back up, try to get her back going. And I talked to him on the phone today, and I said, how many people you have down, Brother Jerry? He said, well, Sunday, the first Sunday I was here, we had 10 people. Now that's sad from a church. It was a good-sized church at one time. Now we have 10 people. And so we want to branch out. We don't want to lose our vision. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to lose our vision. We want to keep going for the Lord. And when we do that, I think there's 3 things I want to look at. Number 1, a vision is the ability to see. Did that surprise you? That's deep, isn't it? It's the ability to see. In other words, when I use this, I want to talk about awareness, being aware of what's around us, being aware of what God can do, being aware of what God wants us to do. So I believe a vision is the ability to see, awareness. And sometimes we just lose it, don't we? We lose control. We lose our sight. We lose what we're here for. And I do say this again, and I hope we'll pray for this year. I really do believe that the greatest mission of this church is propagating the gospel and seeing souls saved by the grace of God. I believe that's what the greatest thing, we should be doing more of that this year. As I preached Sunday morning, no matter how much we witnessed last year, it's not enough. It's not enough. We got to do more. I want to try to get us a bunch of tracts. I really am. Get us a bunch of tracts, and Brother Ken usually takes care of the track racks and everything. And we'll fix them up. We got one in the hallway here. Get a bunch of tracts, get some new ones put in there. And I'd like to see everybody this year take tracts from the church and hand them out as you go around. Hand them out. I mean, what's wrong with that? How does it hurt? To hand a tract to someone. I remember in Brazil when we went to the zoo in São Paulo. Had a big zoo there in São Paulo. We went there one day and we had a bunch of tracts. And we just handed them out as people. We went by people and all that. And you turn around and you stop and see those people reading what was in that. And you never know. You never know. I told you the story of one man when I worked at Edgecombe I unloaded trucks with an overhead crane. I operated the crane and everything. Truck drivers come in, and boy, I tell you what, some truck drivers are the dirtiest, nastiest people you ever seen in your life. T-shirt they wear, the guy weighed about 300 pounds. I think some of them do anyhow. And it looks like he wears a T-shirt for a 12-year-old. You know what that looks like, right? You know, it comes down about right here, and that big old belly hanging out down here, and you can be on the back of the truck unloading it and putting the straps around the steel and all that and picking it up with the crane. And you can smell him when he walks by. You know, you can smell him when he walks by. But I gave a tract. I gave tracts to all of them. After I got my heart right with the Lord, and I started giving tracts to all of them. I even, whenever I'd band up steel, and I'd put a tract in that steel. And I'd band it up and send it out. Hey, I pulled orders for Paul Newman. Y'all ever heard of Paul Newman? Anybody ever heard of him? I pulled orders for Paul Newman and Burt Reynolds because they had a racing team called, I think it's called Auto One or Racing One or something like that. And they were the owners of I think it was in the, it wasn't in NASCAR, but it was in the open, what do you call that? The open car, like the Formula and the Indy cars, like the Indy cars. And I would put tracks inside there. Now, I know Burt Reynolds and Paul Newman never saw them, but you never know, do you? Whenever I put it in there and I saw their name on the order, I would say, hey, I'm praying for Paul Newman and for Burt Reynolds. You never know, do you? So I hope we'll never lose that vision of going forward and taking a track and handing it to someone. Handed that truck driver. He came back several months later, told me, he said on the way up the interstate, he stopped at a rest area, pulled over, read the track, and he said, I got saved by the grace of God. That was several months later whenever he came back. And I unloaded his truck again. So you never know what God's going to do with that. Hey, listen, His Word will not return unto Him void. The Word of God. So let's be willing to go out. Let's don't lose that vision. So the awareness of what God can do if we'll just be obedient to Him. Now, I would like to think about it like this. I believe we have a vision like Joshua and Caleb. Look real quick in Numbers chapter 14. In Numbers chapter 14, Joshua and Caleb, man, what a vision they have when the spies go out and Moses sent them out and everything, and they come back and all those spies, boy, they just had the bad report. It sounds like the average Baptist church, doesn't it? That's what it sounds like. But I'm glad, listen, can I say this? I am glad we are not the average Baptist church. Now, folks, I'll be honest with you. Many times when I preach up here in this pulpit, you know what I know I'm doing? I'm preaching to the choir. I really know that because I know your faithfulness and I know what we have here. All you have to do, and we don't compare ourselves among ourselves, don't get me wrong there, but all you have to do is step outside the walls of this church sometime, go to another church and see how God's blessed us here. Good people. I'm talking about good people. In Numbers chapter number 14, here they go. The spies have gone out. And I think I've got this, I hope I've got this written down right. In verse number 6, and Joshua the son of Nun, in other words, he didn't have any parents. Joshua didn't have any parents, the son of Nun. That was deep, wasn't it? That was deep there. Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes, and they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it is an exceeding good land. Look at that vision they had, man. They saw the vision there. They saw what could happen. Hey, listen, you know what? Seriously, 2 years ago when we first started looking at this building right here, and I asked people along the way, I said, what do y'all think? Is it worth $498,000? And you know what a lot of people said? A lot of work needs to be done in that building. But it's still worth $498,000. See, I didn't see a lot of work to be done. You know what? I knew we had people to do it. And y'all ready to kill me now, right? All of you ready to hang me, take me out and shoot me and stone me or whatever. But you know, you've got to be able to see past that. I can take an old house and I can look at that old house and I can see the potential in that old house. And what you do is you remodel it and you flip it and you make some money off of it. That's what you do. You got to have a vision to be able to see. And that's what they saw here. They said, that is an exceeding good land. Verse number 8, if the Lord delight in us, then He will bring us into this land and give it us, a land which floweth with milk and honey. Then I like what he said here. Here's his vision. He said, only rebel not ye against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us. Their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Fear them not. Boy, what a vision that is. Don't be afraid of what's going to happen. People say all the time, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. I think it was in Philippians, he said, be careful for nothing but in prayer And Thanksgiving, just do whatever God tells you to do in that. So let's don't have that. Let's have a vision. I believe a vision, listen now, a vision is more than just looking on the bright side. You see not Daniel Bright, but a lot of times you have a vision, right? And a vision is not just looking on the bright side. You know what a vision is? Looking on God's side. That's what a vision is all about. Not just looking on the bright side. Look at the bright side of it. No. A lot of people say that all the time. A vision is looking on God's side. Now, what if the vision God gives us is not the vision we were looking for? What if it is not what we was choosing, what we were after? You know what you got to learn how to do? Bloom where you're planted. What God puts in your hand, what God gives you, bloom there. So vision, number one, is the ability to see, awareness. I hope you'll write that down somewhere. Vision, number two, is the faith to believe. Now, I preach a lot about faith here at Zion Hill Baptist Church, but I believe this right here is my attitude. We've got number one is awareness. But I believe this faith here, that what I'm talking about here, vision is the faith to believe, my attitude. What is your attitude? What is my attitude? And our attitude determines a lot about what we're going to do. I mean, are we like that guy on Gulliver's Travels? You know, I remember as a little boy watching the cartoons, Gulliver Travels and all that. And they had those little munchkins or whatever they were called, you know, those little lily popkins or whatever they're called and everything. And they, you know, that tied him down and did all that stuff to him and everything. And one of them, every time they go try to do something, he'll say, "It'll never work. We're doomed already." Boy, what an attitude. What an attitude. It'll never work. We're doomed already. I'll never forget that. That was my favorite character on there. I really liked him more than anybody else. He was always so happy. You know, just grumpy and everything. Never want to do anything. Look at my attitude. Look at this attitude. Now think about this. I'm going to compare two things here. A vulture and a hummingbird. A vulture and a hummingbird. And I sure hope we got a bunch of hummingbirds around here, not a bunch of vultures. You know, the hummingbird and the vulture, they both fly over the land here in America, don't they? Over the deserts and everything, especially the desert. Let's say the desert area. And those little hummingbirds, they're something else, aren't they? That vulture, you know what he does when he's flying by? The only thing he ever sees is rotting meat, roadkill. He sees all that little stinking stuff and everything. That's all he sees, you know. That's what he looks for. That's what he looks for. You got those people who are vultures, you know what they're looking for? Something to complain about, something to look at. You know, what's that attitude? What is my attitude? That's what a vulture does. And then the hummingbird, what he does, you know what he does? He ignores those dead animals and everything. He ignores the roadkill. And going through a desert place, anything that might have died because of the heat or whatever, you know what he does? That hummingbird is looking for that bloom, like one of these flowers here, in a desert spot. And there's some beautiful little flowers that bloom in the desert. And he'll look for that, and that's what he's looking for. He's not looking for the dead thing. He's not looking for all that. In other words, what I'm trying to say here is the vulture, he lives on what was. Yeah. The dead and the gone. That's what the vulture lives on. What was. What you see down there. I think on January the 1st, there's some place here in America. It might be in Kentucky or one of these places, you know, I can't remember. And they have don't they drop a possum? Don't they have you know, in New York City, they drop the ball, right? And there's a town that every year they have the possum drop. But because of the PETA, you know, what does PETA stand for? Preachers Eating Tasty Animals. Is that not what it stands for? You know, I mean, that's the way I look at it. You know, go shoot a deer and you're going to eat some tasty animals. I don't think that's what they meant it to stand for. I think it's people, what is it? Anybody know? Help me out. Huh? Ethical treatment of animals. Wow. I thought it was preachers or people eating tasty animals. Yeah, it works for me too. I like that part of it. And so you have all these things. You have all these people. But that old hummingbird, he don't do that. These PETA people, you know what they did? They fought, fussed, and everything. They complained. And now I think that the people in that town, when they did the possum drop this year, it had to be a roadkill possum. It couldn't be a live possum. Oh, give me a break. You know, I mean, what's a possum good for except to smile at you and play dead? That's about it, man. You go up to them, man, they can put the biggest smile you ever seen on somebody. You ever seen one play possum? I mean, they really actually almost die, I believe. We had one, and when we lived in the parsonage up here, Nathan, was you with us that night? And we was down on the front porch. There's a possum going across the front yard church. And we had our dog, Sandy. Said, Sandy, go get it. Boy, Sandy ran out there. She was going to tear that possum up. And as soon as she got at that possum, I mean, it like died. It went limp. I've never seen that. I've heard people talk about playing possum, playing dead and all that. And that possum, he just flopped over. Sandy, well, that's not much of a fight. So she come back to the porch. And I bet it took 5 minutes, didn't it? About 5 minutes or so until that possum started finally moving like it's getting its life back in it. And it got up and started walking up. Go get it, Sandy. She went taking off out there. She told boys, and right when she got it did the same thing. And Sandy stopped, looked at it. She walked back up on the porch. And about 5 minutes later, 3 times, we did the same thing. And here goes that possum. It finally got up again, started walking off. Go get it, Sandy. She, ain't worth it. Didn't go. We couldn't get her to go after it. You know, there's no fight in the thing. But here are people that are united and stop a city. And the city bows down to that. You're not going to hurt a possum by dropping him wherever they drop him at, on a chain or a string or whatever. But the hummingbirds, you go back to that. And that's how people are. Vultures, you know what they do? The dead and the gone. That's what they look for. But the hummingbird, you know what they go after? What is. What's alive. What's now. What's still alive. That's what kind of attitude we should have. You see, I think one of the greatest attacks on our vision is our attitude. It really is. And this is probably what it is sometimes. No one else cares, so why should I? So I believe that a vision is a faith to believe. It's my attitude. Now, last of all tonight, number 3, vision is the courage to do. The courage to do. And I say this is action. Action. We talk about it, but do we ever do it? How many times we talk about knocking on the door? How many times we talk about visiting someone? How many times we talk about praying? How many times we talk about ministry and we never do it? Talk is cheap, right? And I believe vision is the courage to do. Let me say this right here now. As a pastor, and I believe as any leader in a church or any kind of thing you go to, a vision, I believe I can look at it like this. As long as I see it, it's between me and God. It's between God and me. Whenever I see it, it's between God and me. And then I believe I can look at it, as long as I have the right attitude, it's my time between God and me. It's the time between God and me when I have that right attitude and I do it. But here comes the problem we have sometimes. So many times when we have a vision. Now listen to me. If it's my vision and if I see it, it's between God and me. Have you ever called somebody whenever you saw something in the verse in the Bible, something that really just stuck out to you, you called somebody, you were all excited about it, and it didn't faze them a bit? I mean, it doesn't faze them a bit. You talk about it. Preachers, sometimes we stand up here, man, we got a message burning in our heart. We want to say something, and we're out here preaching. It didn't faze you a bit. It was a blessing to me. It didn't faze the people a bit, you know. I thought, wow, I thought that was wonderful. Didn't even get a grunt. Didn't even get a grunt out of it, you know. But when it's like that vision, as long as I see it, it's between God and me. And as long as I can have the right attitude, it's the time between God and me. But now here's the problem. Here's where we're coming to the problem. And I will stop here before I make this statement. And I will say thank God for Zion Hill Baptist Church. Because when we cast a vision, when we put something forth, it seems like this church goes after it 110%. Paul said, as in me is. And I think that's how we should do it. As much as in me is. He said, I'm ready to preach, didn't he? He said, I'm ready to do. He said, I'm ready to go. But here's the problem when you have a vision. When it comes to putting the vision into action. You see, I said vision is the courage to do action. Here's the problem. If it's my vision, and if it's your vision, and it's between me and God, and it's between our time with God, or whatever, and when we try to cast that vision openly, now it involves other people, see? And when it involves other people, that's where you can stumble on that vision. Because you got the vision and you want to throw it out there and you want to cast it forth and you want to get the people to bite into it, hook, line, and sinker, and you want them to go with that vision. Now, again, I want to stop and say, this church is great about doing what we asked to do. But there's a lot of churches out there that won't do that. And so when it involves other people, that's when, if you're not careful, that vision that God's given you will dwindle. It will diminish, and the light will go out. And that's why we've got to keep our eyes on the Lord. So vision is the ability to see, my awareness. Vision is the faith to believe. That's my attitude. And vision is the courage to do. That's my action. Now, I believe when we come down to this, I believe the courage of vision is to say this right here. And I've got 2 or 3 verses here that I want to give you tonight before I close. This is what it is. You remember whenever the boat was on the water, storms were coming, and Jesus come walking on the water. And Peter said this right here. He said, Lord, it is thee. Bid me come unto thee. And I believe that's what that vision is, the action. Lord, if it's you, if it's your will, if that's what you want us to do, Lord, bid us to come. No matter how stormy it is, no matter how gloomy it looks, no matter how dark it is outside, Lord, if it's your will, Lord, bid us to come. Let us go and let us do this thing. Number 2, if God, look in Romans chapter number 8, if you would. I love this verse. Very, very simple verse. There's no reason for anyone in this church not to memorize this verse. No reason at all not to memorize this verse. Easiest verse in the Bible besides John 11:35 to memorize. John 11:35, Jesus wept. And everybody wants to memorize that verse. Here it is in Romans chapter 8. In Romans chapter 8 and in verse number 31 says this. What shall we say then, or say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? You see, that's what the vision is. If God be for us, who can be against us? You know, people say this right here, well, preacher, you don't know what the people might do. And people in churches seem to know, in certain churches, seem to know who the troublemakers are. And they'll say, well, you don't know what that person can do. Now let me stop and say this. If you or anyone in a church will follow the troublemaker, listen to me. I'm not trying to be mean. If you'll follow a troublemaker, we don't need you. We don't need you. We don't need the people that follow troublemakers. If you can stir up a stink and tell a lie and people follow you, bye-bye. Ciao. Hasty lumbago. Whatever you want to say. You know, get out. You know, if you're going to do that, if you're going to follow a troublemaker, we don't need. If God be for us, who can be against us? You can't stop the work of God. You cannot stop the work of God. Then look here in Romans chapter 8, verse number 18. Verse number 18. This is what Paul said. He said, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. In other words, trials of this life are not worthy to be compared. I believe that's faith, and I believe that's vision in action. I believe that's the courage to do. That when I do it, that whatever hard time we may have to go through, whatever difficult time it is, it's not worthy to be compared to the glory that's going to be revealed in us through Christ Jesus if we'll just follow Him and do the things He has to do. I believe Paul was a Southerner, don't you? I really do. Because he said, I reckon. I mean, that's a Southern word, isn't it? That is a Southern word, I reckon. Over yonder, he said that a couple of times, didn't he, in the Bible, over yonder and reckon. I think Paul was a Southerner, I really do. I'm just kidding about that. But see what faith is? A real vision. I believe we should have, as a church, we should have that real vision to launch out and to do things that God would have us to do. And don't let anyone say, we ought to have the awareness, we ought to have the attitude, and we should have the action. Let's do it this year, okay? Let's step out into the deep and let's do. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You know, whenever Jesus told them to launch out and to come out, and someone was in ankle-deep water and knee-deep water and all that. And then when you launch out into the deep and you're in water up to here and you have to tread water, see, when you're in ankle-deep water, knee-deep water, and waist-deep water, you can get mud from the bank and you can sling it on people. But when you're in water up to here, now let me say a couple of things here. Number one, you're treading water. And you're not going to reach down too much to try to grab the bottom. You're just treading water. And you're trusting. And the only thing that's being seen is the head. Who's the head of the church? The Lord Jesus Christ. And what we need to do is just get out a little bit deeper water. Stand right here. I can look at you and I can throw mud at you from the bank. I get right here, I can still do it. But when I launch out here, I think one of the funniest stories I've ever heard told in my life was Brother Larry. He knows all about the waist-deep water. He knows all about the waist-deep water. Boat was drifting off one day, and he was going to have to catch his boat. He had pulled his truck up. He was going to have to catch the boat. He forgot to tie the rope to the boat. When he let the boat go out in the water, here goes his boat drifting away from the dock. And he's standing on the dock looking at the boat kind of drifting away. He thought, I can jump and make it. And then he thought, man, if I miss, I may break my neck. So he decided to jump in the water off the dock. Now, he had a boat that looked like a tank in the water. It looked like a ship. I mean, it was a big, high boat. And he swam out to the boat and got around the boat trying to pull himself up. Clothes are all wet and everything. Trying to pull himself up 2 times the weight with all that wet clothes on. Pulling. Wore himself out. Got so tired. He said, what am I doing this for? I can go around to the back of the boat and climb up by the motor. So that's what he did. But when he got around to the back of the boat, he was so tired, wasn't he? So tired. He said, and he let his feet go down, and he felt something. And all of a sudden he stood up. He was in waist deep water. All that. Did that really happen, Larry? You're fine. And launch out into the deep. He was treading water, didn't have to. He was swimming in water he didn't have to swim in. And then he got so embarrassed, he was looking up into the store and see if anybody was watching him. Then you got to come up with a recovery. You got to act like, oh, I'll just check my motor, you know. I'll just go around here and check my motor. But let's launch out into the deep. Let's have faith. Let's trust Lord Jesus Christ, okay? Father, thank you tonight for your blessings. I pray, Lord, your will be done. Help us, Lord, to have faith.